Welcome friends to a Creative Cutter Room tip video. The tip I'm going to share with you today is about working with Cricut, with your Cricut machine, Cricut vinyl, and a glass baking dish to do an etching project. We're going to etch the bottom of this baking dish. If you take some food over to a neighbor or take it to a party, you want to be sure you get your pan back. The best way is to make sure that it's etched on the bottom of that pan, so when the food's all gone, you know exactly which pan belongs to you. So for this project, you're going to need a couple of tools. I recommend the Cricut toolkit pieces. You'll want the dental hook looking tool like that, a pair of scissors, and some kind of a scraper. Now if you have the Cricut toolkit, you'll have these pieces. If you don't, then a credit card, a paper piercer, and a good pair of scissors will work for you. I've placed my vinyl, and you just need a scrap piece on here. You do want it the entire length of your mat, so at least 12 by, at least 3 by 12, so that you get the length you need for this baking pan. Now, not all baking pans will etch, so you can test a corner of your pan to make sure that the etching cream will take on this. And my first step is to measure my pan. Now this pan is about 12 inches along the bottom there, and I want to center the word that I'm placing along the top. Now to center it, I'm just going to take a couple of inches off, so I'm going to estimate that I want my wording to fit within 10 inches on this pan. And I do that so that it doesn't run over the edges here. If I were to make it a full 12 inches, it could wrap around the beveled edge here. So if I do 10 inches, I know it's going to be centered. That's my first tip for you. When you want your Cricut machine to do some calculating for you, what you want to do is, instead of trying to guess how tall those letters will need to be to fit on that length, you are going to use your Fit to Length button on your Cricut machine. So I've measured. The first thing I want to show you is that I'm going to use my Art Nouveau cartridge. Now this cartridge happens to have a beautiful font found within the cartridge. If you're new to the Cricut machine, you will find that there are different style cartridge handbooks. This particular style is the newer style, where you'll find the main photo here on this left hand side, and on the right hand side you'll find 6 blocks that are divided into 2 halves. So each one of these blocks has a name, and that name matches the Creative Feature buttons found here on your matching keypad. Okay? Now, if it happens to fall on the right hand side, you will need to use the Shift key to get that image. Now, for my particular project, I'm going to be using the Font 1 Creative Feature button, and I also want to have my caps lock on because I will be doing all of my letters in capitalization, and I want this style right here. So on my machine, the first thing I'm going to do is press Font 1, and I'm going to press my Shift lock. Okay, that's to get my styling. Now the second tip actually I'm going to share with you, besides measuring your pan, is that you want to, when you have a font found within a shape cartridge, which Art Nouveau is mainly a shape cartridge, a really quick and easy way to type in the letters that you want without having to flip to each page to find out where that letter is to grab a keypad from a font cartridge, and this is my Pooh font set keypad, and replace that. So once you've programmed the Creative Feature and whatever else you want off of that keypad, I'm just going to remove it and place my font cartridge keypad in its place. This way I can easily type the letters that I need without having to refer to each page of that letter. Okay? So the next tip, which has to do with part of the first tip, was I'm going to engage my Fit to Length button on right there. Now the size on my machine is going to be the length of my project. So the maximum length I can do for what I had planned out was 10 inches, and you saw me measure that. So now I'm going to load my mat, and make sure that I have the correct settings. Now if you have a little cheat sheet here like I provide on my website, you'll check the vinyl settings and you'll see that it's all number 3. So I have 3 on my blade here, I have 3 on my speed by having 3 bars highlighted, and 3 on my pressure. That's the key number for working with vinyl. The next tip I want to share with you is the way that you want to enter your letters. Because we are glass etching from the bottom here, my letters need to be entered in reverse order. What I'm putting along the top of my pan is the word university. So I wrote that with a pen. I hope you can see that. So I write it down for myself so I can see the order that I need to enter it in backwards. Okay? So the first step I'm going to do is hit my flip key, because not only do they have to be entered backwards, they also have to be flipped. So my flip key is now on, my fit to length button is on, my font 1 button is on, and my caps lock is on because I want all the letters capitalized. And now I'm going to type in the word university backwards, starting with the Y. Now this will make sense why you've had to use that reverse order in just a minute. And if you stop to look here at my screen, you'll see that the letters are coming up flipped and they're being put in reverse order according to how I'm typing them in. So, okay, now that sounds a little strange. When you etch the front of a glass like a bottle or a vase, you do not need to flip or enter in reverse. The only time you need to do that is when you're etching from the underside. So with the first tip that I gave you with the fit to length, once you've typed in all of your letters and you're on fit to length and 10 inches, once you press the OK button here on your screen, your machine's going to calculate what's the biggest height of that letter that it can make. So for instance, on this cartridge it's telling me that using size 1 inch will match the 10-inch length. And that way I know that the machine's not going to make a letter that's too big once I start spreading them out on the pan. So I'm going to hit cut. It's going to remind me one more time here that it's going to be 1 inch, and then it'll start working. So here we go. Now normally when you're going to use the letters that are left behind, like for wall poems and that kind of thing, you're going to weed out all this stuff, all the stuff left out around the letter. But in the case of glass etching, you're creating a stencil, so what you want to do is actually take out the letter. So this dental pick tool, and I'll move here in camera, actually allows you to pick out the letter. I wonder if you can see that. Lets you pick out the letter that was cut out by your Cricut. So you pick that out. So here's the vinyl letter, and I've just crumpled it up, and there's the spot in the vinyl where the letters come out of. Now I just started a little garbage pile here on my mat where the little scraps will collect. Now it doesn't matter how you pick this out with your dental pick tool. You can scratch at it if you need to, as long as you do it in the center of the letter and not towards, and I'll show you here after I move this T, not towards the line, because if you scratch the line there, you could warp the image that you're trying to get on the stencil. So what you're going to do is just carefully pick somewhere in the center section. Now for this letter right here, there's a little piece that's a detail in the letter that normally we would remove, but when you're creating a stencil you want to leave that behind. So see here in that letter, there's that little piece right there. You want to be sure that that stays behind and in place. You'll see those little kinds of dots in I's, in details of D's and P's and A's. You want those little kinds of things to be sure and stay behind. Now this R is going to have a couple of spots, so I want to carefully make sure that those two stay behind. And I hope I can show you here as I peel that back out of the way, so that when you etch this, the detail in that R is actually left behind. Now I'm going to continue doing this piece. Just a second off camera, I want to show you my finished piece real quick so you can see what I was talking about with the reverse and the flip. Let me set that aside. So here's my finished piece. Now when I did the fit to length on the I'm doing the University of Utah. When I did the fit to length on the of Utah part, because there were less letters, do you see how that's cut bigger than the university part? And that's okay. If you want the letters to be the exact same size, then I know that these were cut at 1 inch. I would set this at 1 inch and remove the fit to length button. In this case, I did want it to cut as big as possible. And you can see how that is reading backwards, and I want to show you why that is. So if I get my glass pen here, if I were going to etch from this side, that wouldn't make sense. When you actually remove the vinyl, when you stick it to the pan, and I hope you can see this, if you hold it up to the light on the back side of the pan, you're going to see how the letters will actually etch into the glass. So you can see that when you're doing something from the back side, it's important to do it in reverse order and backwards. If you didn't do that and it looked correct from the front, when you actually put it on here and etch it, you can see how it's going to come out backwards. So that's why it's important to flip and do the reverse order for the letters. So I'm going to finish prepping this, and once I get the university all picked out, I'll show you how to pick up and place your letters on the pan. Okay, ladies, so now I'm ready to pick up my letters. I've done all the weeding, which means removing the garbage. I'm going to take my tape runner real quick, and I'm going to put it on the back side of this, just so, this isn't my regular tape runner, but let me get, oops. I'm just going to grab a little bit of that, and I'm going to stick it to my mat. The reason I do that is because I want to make sure that my letters stay straight. I'm going to use my mat to help me line that up and just place it so it doesn't move while I get the next part. Now you're going to want some kind of transfer tape. Cricut usually sells transfer tape in rolls. I buy this stuff industrially, so I get different strips of transfer tape. Now this masking tape looking stuff is not my favorite. I prefer the see-through vinyl. When I do a vinyl layering project, I use the see-through transparent tape, transfer tape, because I want to layer my vinyl and I can see through it. But for this project, this tape will be just fine. So I cut a piece of transfer tape that matches my letters, and then I'm going to carefully place it right over top, being sure that I can just easily smooth out that tape over the letters. Now, most people will tell you at this point to start burnishing from the front. I prefer to do it from the back side. The reason I do that is because this burnishing motion, which is causing friction between the two layers of tape, is what causes the vinyl to move. I find that if you do it from the back side, that it moves easier. So I'm just burnishing from this end, and you just kind of want to do it in all directions, and that's what you use the scraper tool for. And then how you check to see if it's ready is you start to remove the back piece. Now remember, we're using the stencil, so the piece we actually want to save is the entire stencil piece. Now see how that's sticking to the back of this a little bit? Then you want to burnish some more and make sure it stays in place. So I'm just going to do this, whoops, in all the directions. You kind of do it like spreading wallpaper paste to make sure it's all going to stick. And I'm going to try that again. And what you're doing is you're lifting off the backing paper from the vinyl. And as much as possible, you want to work down on your table to keep the vinyl from warping up on itself. So I'm just going to wiggle in a left-right motion, making sure that all my letters are stuck. There's no pieces left behind. And you can see when you've done enough burnishing how easy that just moves. So now I've got my letters ready to place on my pan. If you have a partner to help you with this next part, to make sure that it's nice and straight, it's good to get some help. If not, what you can do is just do it from a standing position, which usually helps you get better visibility. And you just want to center the letters. I'm going to do this over my grid so that the grid on my mat is going to help me stay straight. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the of Utah part. So here's this piece, and again I'm just going to do vinyl. I'm going to tack it down. I like to tack it down so it doesn't move on me while I'm trying to put the tape on. This is a much bigger piece, and even though my transfer tape is in strips, I'm simply going to overlay each strand. I'll show you what I mean. Oh, my tape. Let's stop working here for just a second. Now this tape I did put over top of the other transfer tape, the little one strip that I had placed down, because it wasn't worth moving once I placed it down. But you just continue the process of burnishing until you can lift up the image and leave all of the colored vinyl down on the tape. Now, this end's not catching, so let me try that again. Now the cut that your Cricut machine does with those low settings is called a kiss cut, which means that it cuts through just the colored vinyl part and not this background paper, which makes it very easy to move. You can just see, whoops, that little piece was coming up. That's why you wiggle left to right, and you do it very slowly, so that if pieces are not quite stuck down, you can catch it before just ripping it off. If you were to just rip this back, you might not catch those little pieces that get stuck behind. So I'm wiggling left to right, lifting that off, and now my image is ready to place. Now you can see that this piece of tape is quite crooked, so when I place this on my glass, I want to be very careful that it is going to go on there straight. So again, I'm going to use my grid down on my mat to help me place the letters. Now because this is on clear transfer tape, I'll be able to see just where I'm placing those letters. Again, if you see it from this side, you can see how I place that. I'm going to burnish one more time. And then I'm going to very easily put this back, left to right, making sure nothing lifts off. Now, the white transfer tape I don't want, so I'm just going to pull that off. The rest of this transfer tape I'm just going to roll back onto here, and I've got it for another project. Okay? So once you're down to this portion, if you've left yourself a nice wide enough border, you're ready to go ahead and just put your etching cream down. If you have a thinner border, like right there, you want to be careful that the cream doesn't actually go off of there onto the glass. You want it to stay just within the stencil mark. So I'm going to be careful where I place it, but I'm also going to use some of this transfer tape to help block those areas where I think it's a little tight. And you can just use the piece that you just used and just simply cut it into smaller strips, which is what I'm going to do. If I can find my starting point, there it is. So I'm just going to use that to help me protect bits of this glass. You'll be able to see what I'm doing here as I... So I'm placing that there, where I think it might run over and cause me some problem. Okay, everywhere else I think I'm okay. Now, there are different etching creams out there. The one that I like to use is from Auber's Arts and Crafts. This is Armor Etch. and you can place that on with just about any tool. The popsicle stick works. I'm just going to use a nice long brush and mix it up just a bit. The process for this is to place it in the stencil openings and then set a timer for a few minutes. So I've got my handy dandy strawberry timer here that I'm going to set after I've applied the cream. Now you want to be careful not to get this on your hand because there is acid in there after all. It's about the consistency of pancake batter when you place it in. And you want to try and get it all done without having to add too many brush strokes. You want a nice lumpy consistency, and you can add extra and pick up a lot of this cream back into the bottle after you've etched. So be generous with it. I'm just going to kind of plop some of it on there. You want to fill in all of those openings. And again, be careful not to get it on any glass that you don't plan to etch. That's the only real trick, is to keep it in the area you want to work with. If you have some nice rubber gloves or craft gloves that you like to use at home, I keep a stack of those. I've done so much of this etch, I think I'm immune to this on my skin anyways. But you just want to be sure that you don't get it all over. Okay? So you don't want to leave any open, empty glass spots. You want to make sure all of the glass is pretty much evenly covered with the cream. And if it's thicker in some areas, it's okay. Like I said, you can scrape all of this back into the bottle before you wash it off. Now I think all of that's pretty much covered. I'm going to set my little strawberry timer here for 10 minutes while that sits, and let that tick away. And I'm going to start covering the other portion of the glass as well. And I'll let you see this right after it sets. I'm going to rinse it with clear water in my sink, being sure that the cream doesn't touch any of the other glass. It's just going to be under the running water, and I'm going to push it off with a soft cloth. So be back in just a moment to show you that process. Some creams out there, the one that I like to use is from Auber's Arts and Crafts. This is Armor Etch, and you can place that on with just about any tool. The popsicle stick works. I'm just going to use a nice long brush and mix it up just a bit. The process for this is to place it in the stencil openings and then set a timer for a few minutes after I've applied the cream. Now you want to be careful not to get this on your hand because there is acid in there after all. It's about the consistency of pancake batter when you place it in. And you want to try and get it all done without having to add too many brush strokes. You want a nice lumpy consistency, and you can add extra and pick up a lot of this cream back into the bottle after you've etched. Show you that process. And the way to accomplish that is with this cool tool here by Ink Essentials. It is a Ranger product, and you can buy it wherever you buy your Adirondack alcohol inks. Now it must be an alcohol ink of some sort. I'm going to again use this Ranger Tim Holtz stuff. Who doesn't love Timmy? He's wonderful, and his products are wonderful. Now I do still have a little bit of water in here. You just want to make sure it's as dry as you can possibly get it. I'm going to try and smooth that down. The university portion stayed down really well, but these bigger letters kind of got some water up in there. So I'm just going to try and smooth those out, get it as dry as possible. The tool will kind of help keep the ink in place. Now this alcohol ink dries super fast, but it can bleed, so you want to be careful to only get it where you want the ink to be. And you're going to put some on your sponge there, and you're just going to work kind of quickly to dab it in the area of the stencil. You want to cover as much of it as was etched with the glass etching project. Pick out the colored glass. And I am just doing a very light coating. You could definitely go in and do a couple of coats, make the coloring much darker, but Here we go. Now the reason I've done the underside and not the front side of this is again because of this is an actual baking pan and it wanted to be food safe. Now wherever it bled out a little bit, I'm just wiping up before it has a chance to dry. It's a good idea to have some wipers on hand, the non-alcohol wipers, and you just kind of clean up after yourself as you take that stencil off. Wherever the glass didn't etch, that should clean up fairly easily. Where it's etched, it should be permanently colored. Enjoyed this tip and would like me to continue teaching some more fun things about the Cricut, please leave me a comment. Tell me what kinds of things you'd like to see. Yeah, let me get that in camera. So I'm going to clean that up, remove the little back pieces, and you can now see that at our next University of Utah party, I'm going to surprise my husband at the end of his 7-layer dip. He's going to see his school team name. So I hope you've enjoyed that project. Visit creativecutter.org for more Cricut fun and tips, and hope to hear from you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Okay, now I know it's going to be hard to tell, but I did do the etching process. It's over here started to warp a little bit, and I'm trying to just smooth them flat with my, but I've left the vinyl on, because 2 videos before, is this next tip, which is that you can now accomplish that with this cool tool here by Incus and Adirondack alcohol inks. Now it must be an alcohol ink of some sort. He's wonderful, and his products are wonderful. Now I do still have a I'm going to try and smooth that down. The university portion stayed down really well, but now get it as dry as possible. The tool will kind of help keep the ink in place. Bleed, so you want to be careful to only get it where you want the ink to be. And you're going to put some in the area of the stencil. You want to cover as much of it. I'm going to do the next letter. This is going to take me a bit, but I'll show you motion, especially where those areas where I think that it might have lifted up. I'm going to kind of use. Now you can make either silver or bronze fixative to give it even another dimension, and the color is red, so I'm just going to go right to the red. And you can also do a marble-like effect. So I've done those letters, and I'm going to carefully write to the areas I want to cover, and have it completely dry, and leave the stencil in place. Soak it off carefully. So, in a second here, I'll be able to pick this. So, I'm going to just pick it up, kind of see the alcohol that all turned out once I pick this up. Now I want to be sure and get my little corners of some letters might have been missed. And like I said, this alcohol ink dries fairly quickly, so we're just going to color glass. And I am just make the coloring much darker, but there we go. Now the reason I've done the underside and not the front side of this is again today. Now wherever it bled out a little bit, I'm just wiping up, just kind of clean up after yourself as you take that stencil off. The etching cream as well as the alcohol ink is dishwasher safe. Kind of be able to fit in between the tape here. Now for Rivalry Week or for Super Bowl Sunday, the 7-layer dip in there, and when everyone's done eating, hopefully for Rivalry Week, again, it's fun to have people bring different, just picking off those little left behind vinyl pieces. And yeah. So you now have a colored, etched glass piece that should, of course, you'll be much more careful when you'll do some tip, and would like me to continue teaching some more fun things about Cricut. So I'm going to clean that up, remove the little back pieces, and you can now surprise my husband at the